Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth, and welcome to the public work session. I now call the meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Barnes. Mr. Hugel.
Present.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Here.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Mr. Tillage.
Here.
Dr. Whitaker.
Present.
Mayor Glover.
Here. Ms. Terry, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of Portsmouth City Council. Today, our public work session will consist of public utility service fees, public empowerment sessions, PRHA Lexington Place, and City Council liaison reports. If it pleases the council, I would like to stand before you to do a presentation for the public utility service fees.
Please, ma'am. Thank you. Please, ma'am. If you would proceed to the podium, you have the floor.
Good evening, council. Portsmouth City family. We're going to start with the utility fees update. We gave a briefing last week about reducing some fees for utilities. However, there were some additional questions from council that I'm bringing back for more information as requested. Again, fees and facts, we're talking about the transfer fees as it relates to some of the fees that we actually receive from our citizens for water. This was a correction from last week. The fee transfer on the system showed $5, but after doing some additional research, we found that the fees are actually $10. And what I wanted to do is provide a breakdown of what we had received thus far. So in fiscal year 22, there were 116 accounts that actually had a $10 transfer fee associated with a move, which was about $1,100, close to $1,200. As of 23, there are 37 accounts that have a transfer, and we've actually received $370. The reason I'm providing this information is because I just want you to see an average of what we would normally collect in fees for the $10, in case you were wondering how much that looked like for us. How many eligible, and why I put tenant accounts, are eligible to receive a deposit credit? The reason I have this here is, remember, if you own your home, you weren't responsible for the deposit. If you were a tenant or you were renting, the deposit was $170. And so out of those accounts where we had $1.4 million in deposits, 1,584 accounts that are active, eligible for a deposit credit, would equate to about $111 or $112,000. What is the cost of the electronic meter? So again, these are residential and commercial meters. The meters range in cost from $113 to $20,000 based on the size of the meter. How many meters are electronic and how many are manual? We have approximately about 34,000 meters in the city. So you have 33,700 electronic meters and you have 273 manual meters. What I would like to bring to your attention is the manual meters are mostly commercial, and the residential meters are the bulk of our meters. And as you can see, we're active residential accounts versus inactive residential accounts. The inactive accounts represent accounts that say you have a home and nobody lives there, so there's no water on, but there is an actual meter in the ground. So those represent those things. why haven't all manual meters been converted to electronic meters? At the time, it was based recovery from COVID-19, supply and demand for parts, and a shortage of inventory. So here we are to a slide that we had last week, and this is just bringing back why are we even recommending these changes. The recommendation is that the deposit goes from 170 to 50 was my recommendation. 0 was proposed for council. No change in commercial deposits, which would remain $300. To apply deposits to invoices after 6 to 12 months of service versus when you just end your account with the city. Establish a $50 proposed versus a $25 current non-refundable setup fee for residential and commercial customers. And lastly, to establish a monthly billing cycle, which is proposed, instead of a bi-monthly billing cycle, which is current. Why are you recommending these changes, Madam Interim City Manager? This is for fair and equity among renters and tenants, again, because our homeowners are not required to pay a deposit. Relief to residents to apply deposits earlier. Reduction of bill was really what that really means. Relief to residents on a monthly cycle. Billing, which would reduce shutoffs and delinquencies. Because again, bi-monthly, 2 months worth of bills. If you get behind, you're going to be 4 months worth of bills behind. I'm requesting a consensus to move forward on fee changes, which would be effective July 1, 2023 for the new budget season. And then these ordinances will be required to make these changes. So if it would please council, I would like to go back to the recommendations and see if I can get some consensus or to see if council has any questions before we move forward.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, on page 2, the transfer fee, I would hope that my colleagues would consider doing away with the transfer fee. It is regressive in nature. It tends to apply from just observation that these are impacting renters more than homeowners. And so it's a minimal amount that's coming back to the city, probably it's spending more to collect it. And so I would suggest that we would eliminate the transfer fee, particularly also looking at the socioeconomic group that's being charged that transfer fee more than likely. Also, the electronic account, the electronic meters. At our last meeting, there was some discussion about the cost of transferring and putting in those electronic meters, and there was some type of fee that's embedded here. Which fee was to cover the setup of the electronic meters from manual?
The $25 right now, 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet for the setup fee for residential and commercial. Right now it's $25, which is what we currently charge. We were proposing, or my recommendation was the $50 since we were eliminating the $170, and that could just build up the fund for projects and everything else.
So, am I reading this correctly that the only manual meters that are left are all commercial?
That's what I've been informed by utilities. They did a push once they were able to get some supplies in and from back orders to turn all manual to electronic other than the commercial. And I had a conversation with them today because the commercial meters are the bigger meters because of the amount of water flow, because we have Chesapeake and all those, so yes.
So the remaining 273 meters, hasn't that cost already been covered in essence?
They haven't converted those, so we're still
Right.
purchasing.
Right, but I thought that there was some discussion about some additional cost that these meters, is that purely just the purchase cost, or was there some, I thought it was some labor issue?
Right. What our discussion was is what I think your question to me was, why are we recommending this, and why don't we just leave it at 25? And my recommendation was 50. And I said, well, there were some costs associated with changing manual to electronic. And we talked about labor, we talked about supplies, and we talked about all those things that creates a cost to the city. So back to your original question, there are costs associated, but because these are just now commercial versus residential, because they've covered that cost, they've already put those meters in the ground, they're already transferred or converted. We're just looking at a commercial cost. Now, this could be, again, the proposed was my recommendation. Of course, I'm going to go with whatever council the consensus is, but again, we have to convert those bigger meters. So we're talking about now, because they're commercial, they're bigger in size. Now, again, you could change this at any time. This is just a preliminary. This is just up for discussion. And so with us going into budget season, looking at other things, this could be held off, this could be left for 25, or you could say, well, next year, let me see what that real cost has been to convert those meters and what new expenses you may have incurred because of that. I mean, it's just an opportunity to kind of determine what direction you want to go.
Just curious, how much are the electric meters?
They range from $113 to $20,000, just because you residential to commercial.
Okay, so, well, you were saying resident, but we only have commercial left.
Yeah, you asked me how much are the electronic meters. Are you
Right.
just talking about what's left to turn into from a
Right.
manual to electrical?
Right, the 273.
Yeah, they range. They're gonna range in the amount, because you may have a business that is a storefront, maybe 900 square feet, that may only be $113, even though you're commercial, to a bigger meter that's at the naval shipyard that may cost $20,000. So it just depends on the water usage or what you would be consuming.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Dr. Whitaker on the $5 transfer fee. I agree that the administrative costs probably eats all or most of that up.
Absolutely.
On the range of the meters, I understand the commercial meters would be larger, more expensive, but what, in the transition from manual to electronic, that was done, what, for a labor saving situation where you didn't have to have a meter reader to go around and read the water meters, correct?
Yeah,
Wasn't that one of the advantages?
One of the many advantages, yes, sir.
Well, so these other additional commercial meters, we're having to manually read those, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, are we, I know you mentioned there's a shortage, but are plans in the works to make that a priority to transition those few remaining commercial meters?
Yes, sir. I spoke with the new utilities interim, and what I asked for is a target date to get those meters transitioned to electronic, to move away from as much manual, because we all know whenever you do anything manual, you put the human side of it, and is room for error. So electronic, you can read it from your point of destination. So to answer your question, yes, we are moving in that direction. I did put that call in once I start pulling all this information together to ask, I need a target date, an amount, and exactly when is this going to be complete?
Thanks.
Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I said last time, I'll say again, the 170 to 50 doesn't make any sense to me. I think there should be a $0 deposit. And I'm afraid I still don't understand what the setup fee does, because if we only have commercial meters left to convert to electronic, I'm guessing those are the $20,000 meters, and so a $50 setup fee doesn't do anything to get a $20,000 meter paid for. I assume the business doesn't pay, we pay for the $20,000 water meter?
No, sir. So
They pay?
They pay.
Okay, so then the $50.
Well, we pay. So, okay, let me.
Yeah, we pay.
You giving me a couple things. So one is, the $50 is definitely when you come and set up new service. You're a new person in the city and you're setting up new water service and whenever you go somewhere else in the city. So of course, that's where you get your setup fee. The meters, we pay, but they pay. So we purchase the meters, of course, and that's the cost of the meter, but they still pay based on the usage of
Yeah,
water.
so they pay for the usage, but we pay to
Out of
buy the
pocket
meter,
to
install the meter, and then monitor the meter. So the $50 is just to create an electronic account in our accounting system to
Set
track
up
their
services.
usage and bill them, right?
Yeah, it's just a setup service for administrative purposes.
Okay, well, I think I'm with Dr. Whitaker that I don't get the $50 setup fee or $25 setup fee. It ought to probably be a $0 setup fee, and we'll just collect as they use.
Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I gotta say, I agree with my colleagues on this one. The fees, from 10 to 5, I think we can wipe that totally out. I guess the $50 fee, I mean, is it accumulating enough for us to even put a dip in the bucket to do any meaningful work with? If not, we can eliminate that and just pass on that savings to our customers, since we increased our water fees in some other place. And I guess the last question is, do we have our team, our public utilities team does the install work, or do we hire out someone to go in and do all of that manual work?
So we were doing all the manual work unless it came to something really big. No, we don't? Okay, I defer to Mr. Wright.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Wright, sir, you have the floor.
Good evening.
Hi.
When they were switching out the residential meters, that was done via contract. So went through our regular procurement process. Public utilities handled the inspection as the work was going on, but a contractor actually did the install for the switch out. And I anticipate it would be the same for the commercial meters. It's a lot more work involved
Right.
for the larger meters.
Okay. And do we have an idea how much that contracted work is?
We
Not
could
off the
we could
top.
get that information. for you.
Right,
Okay.
we can get
All
that.
right.
Would you like me to bring that?
Yeah,
Or
that-
provide that as a report back of what that
Yes.
is?
Right, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to have the floor at this time on this matter? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Right, so to my colleagues, the elimination of the transfer fee, the elimination of the deposit, which that deposit we had talked about at 170 to 50 to 0, and also the elimination of the setup fee. So those are 3 fees, because aren't we also increasing the water rate 5% each year? Okay, so we're already putting a tax on the citizens in that
Yeah.
regard.
And that's why I felt a need to bring it to your attention, because as I spoke to council members
Right.
and to actual residents, that was never on, people, I just don't think you knew. And so as I was at one point overseeing utilities, in that I start going through the processes and procedures, and I'm like, what are these fees looking like? And so who does it really affect? And again, when I found it was just the tenants and not the residents.
Right, so also, but it does raise an issue of concern, though, about the $20,000 meters. So what businesses are being, or are we incurring a $20,000 charge to put in a water meter? I think that needs to be examined, and I would say in
I'm
that,
sorry, I can't hear you.
the businesses that are, in which we're installing $20,000 water meters, which one are they? Because it would seem like that would be some type of cost, unless they're paying some significant bills to the city. That would be something that I would like to see, as far as who's actually getting a $20,000 meter, and what are we getting in return from that?
So in a report back, at some point, we did provide that information to the top 10 highest customers and commercial customers.
But did that correlate with that being a $20,000 meter?
Only in the respect that the higher paid customers, we showed what they actually, if I'm not mistaken, either what they actually were, what made them the top 10, because it does correlate with the meters, because the larger the meter, the more water consumption. And so it would just be another column I could probably add to say how much this meter was that was installed, but it's definitely based on how much water they use. So the top 10, I can definitely provide that back as a report.
Well, that makes it even more sensible to do away with it, because if someone is paying $50 for a $113 meter and someone's paying $50 for a $20 meter, a $20,000 meter, that's not equitable.
Right, and I think this came up again in the past when we brought it up about commercial rate versus the regular residential rate. It's the same. The consumption is what pushes how much they really pay, because again, my house I may only consume let's just say 3 gallons, which is ridiculous, but let's just go with that. And my rate, let's say, is $1 to keep it simple. You have a customer at the shipyard, they're still paying $1 rate, but they're paying for more water. Because I remember bringing this back to council at one time, saying we may want to determine residential, commercial, and it was another category that we talked about in the past. Again, I can resurrect that report back and provide it to council for further discussion if you would like. But just to keep it simple, I would like to see if I can get consensus on these items. Yes, sir.
So before we go there, I want to make sure, because I think we can, based on the discussion, it sounds like my colleagues want to move forward with a consensus on the top 3 items, as Dr. Whitaker indicated. The monthly billing, we haven't discussed that. Is everybody okay with the monthly billing that is proposed, going to monthly versus bi-monthly? Okay.
And Ms. Mayor, I assume that the monthly billing, you've already looked at what the cost, and that cost is not going to be something that.
So for us, we can do that in-house as well. You know, we're doing billing in-house as well. What I did want to explore was a company that gives you more payment methods. So in other words, we would definitely do it in-house. You can pay online. But what I want us to do is go to a next level, just like HRSD has their billing done through Invoice Cloud. If you all receive that, you can get the invoice, you could set it up monthly, you can pay it on your credit card, it pays, right online. If you pay out of your account, it's a less charge. So those are things that I'm trying to explore for our citizens, to have more options of payment methods and options. So right now, currently, absolutely, we can do this. It won't cost the city any more than it is for the quarterly bill, because we do that in-house. So the only thing that I would like, and I'm actually exploring, because I've had several conversations, is to see if we can actually work on a contract that someone already has with Invoice Cloud. I didn't want to say it out loud, but just to see if we can get some additional methods for our customers. Online, your bill shows up, it's a better technology for us, and it gives a lot of relief for our customers and convenience. We're really trying to make it a convenient situation. If COVID-19 taught us nothing else, it definitely told us, let's do a few more things online.
Thank you, ma'am. And Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So Dr. Whitaker, he mentioned the methods on paying, and you covered some of those as well. A lot of people, as you mentioned, they want to pay, they can't pay due to their inability to either get down to City Hall or whatever. So having the online option or a phone is a really good thing. One concern that I have is when I'm one that pays things with credit cards or with debit cards. But when I pay with my debit card, it comes with a 3 or 5% fee. And so that can also be a burden for many people living in our city who, here I am paying my bill with what I do have, but now I'm taking on another 5% onto that. So when we're exploring the options on payment methods, can we explore a way that we can either mitigate that cost or do away with it completely?
Yeah, it's because they are third-party billers, something like that, they come with the fee. So the thing would be to is negotiate the terms in the contract, to determine taking the burden off the taxpayer. But again, that's a part of terms and negotiations whenever you're in a contract. Now, if they already have something that we could actually work with from another locality, we could look at what they have, and then at that point, they can't go over. So we're just trying to find a way to reduce that burden from the taxpayers, but to understand that it's just a part of contract negotiations.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
That was an issue too, when you're talking about those multiple methods, could fees be eliminated? So is there any research being done as far as any software that can be used in-house where it doesn't have to go to a third party?
Well, that's twofold. I'm sure that over time, we could look at that along with some other competing priorities that we have for technology within our city. This was just trying to address the quickest way to bring some relief to customers now. And again, as we continue to walk through this process, that would be great, but we're not quite there yet. We have, again, a new IT director, and I want him to get some other things that we have going. But again, those are all options we're trying to explore.
So based on the discussion and seeing what has come from the discussion, we are in need of a consensus by show of hands for these next few items, which is eliminating, I think we decided that elimination of the transfer fee. In addition to that, there were a couple other items, eliminating the deposit, and also
Deposit for
the
residential.
eliminating the deposit for residential, eliminating the setup fee, and then moving to a monthly billing cycle. So those are the four areas, and if I could get a consensus by show of hands with my colleagues. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Council. So my next presentation is the public empowerment sessions that we discussed. I want to bring that back to council just to give you an update on the status of where we are. Oh, my. So the Public Empowerment Forum update. When I brought this to council last week, council had some suggestions, so I wanted to show council that we've included those into this as we continue to move forward. So we had two proposed dates, and council asked that we add a third. So we've added February 23rd, so we have February 9th, February 16th, and February 23rd. Those will be held between 6 and 8. The city manager's proposed topics. We've now added, from our original, we've added public safety, crime prevention, technology, 911 system improvements, city park, and Airbnb. We've had questions. The events will be held at the 3 high schools, local high schools, because they hit each district. So we have on February 9th, IC Norcom High School, February 16th, Manor High School, and then February 23rd, Churchland High School. Questions?
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Ms. Terry, that seems like a lot of topics to cover at 3 two-hour meetings. Are there more meetings planned?
No, so what we're going to do is we're going to set these up where there will be topics designated for certain meetings. And so I'm working with marketing to get that all registered. So in other words, there are going to be some people who are more interested in crime crime prevention, public safety, and maybe infrastructure. So we'll have those topics, and then they will be able to go to that. There will be some people who are interested in the city jail, city hall, and economic development. Their interest will be at that location. So again, that's why we have 3 different days. Topics will be addressed at those locations. People will be able to register, so we will definitely know how many people will show, and we will be able to do it in that order.
We might want to, since there's still a lot of topics, and we don't know exactly who's going to be interested in what, can't we do some sort of online poll on our website just to get a feel for the topics that people are most interested in?
Well, actually, council added all the topics in the red.
Well, I know we did.
Right.
But we're doing this too for public consumption and feedback. So I'm just throwing it out there that, you know,
Well, just to address that, Councilman Moody, as we do the registration, if that would please council, if I am finding that we're in a position where we need to add another date because, you know, people have even more to say, that's not off the table. We were just trying to do something to get started. Again, this is our first opportunity. So we want to see what the citizens have to say. We want to be able to provide them with some information. And if we find that this has been a very helpful opportunity, we would love to continue it. We have we have the month of March, but we were trying to get this going before we finalized or did the proposed budget.
understand.
Okay.
Councilman Hugel, then Dr. Whitaker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So a comment and a question. Comment, I think if my calendar's right, the 9th and the 23rd are school board meeting nights. And so we're creating a choice. I just make that as a point. My question, it's unclear to me the mechanics of how you're going to do this. So would the intent be for you to present information at these sessions about these topics and then ask people to register to speak, or what do you envision for the mechanics for conducting the meeting?
So my vision
Your vision?
is, and I have to throw this caveat, there will be some topics that I'm sure council would like to come and participate. However, and I'll leave this to the city attorney, more council, well, I'm going to defer to the city attorney because I'm not an attorney, but I would like her to know, you know where I'm going.
We're going to have to limit the number because of the public meeting FOIA rule. And so we'd have to, you know, delegate who goes where so we stay in compliance.
I don't, Mayor.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Mayor,
I'm being told that's not
I beg to differ. It's a public meeting, and all of council can be at a public meeting when citizens are invited. The FOIA won't apply there.
If we make it open.
And you know, to that point, we were at a public meeting a couple of weeks ago at the Sheriff's Training Center, and some of us left out of courtesy. We didn't want to belabor the point, but that's a public meeting. And if it's advertised as a public meeting, all of council can be there.
Well, that was different, Councilman Moody. I want to just, and I understand what you're saying. I don't want to limit anyone's ability to be anywhere. I think we were just trying to be cautious because that was actually a private, it wasn't listed in the public as required by FOIA.
It was advertised on TV. It was advertised on social media, so it was a public venue.
It would have run afoul of FOIA. What I will say, though,
In your
is,
opinion.
in my opinion, that's correct.
I don't
That's
agree with
correct.
that opinion.
I understand.
I'm sorry.
I will take back, as I'm being corrected here by the clerk, that this meeting, so long as it's published and noticed to the public, could be a public meeting, and therefore, as many council members
Thank you.
would need to be, could be there as possible. We would just have to have proper notice to conform with FOIA.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the goal of the public empowerment meeting, I thought, was to hear from the community. So if you start parsing it out as far as these issues will be heard at this location, these issues at this location, you're sort of defeating the purpose of it because you may be raising issues that may not be pertinent to or of concern. I thought the goal of this was to hear from the community, not so much to present to the community, but to hear from the community, unless I'm misunderstanding the purpose
I think
of
there
the
is
meeting.
a bit of misunderstanding because the purpose of this was, we walked into this saying, we're working on our proposed budget. There are some things for our proposed budget that we wanted to actually bring to the citizens and hear from the citizens. Twofold. It wasn't just, I want you to stand and just tell me everything you want to see, hear, and say. That's not what this was for. It was to bring light to, we're working on our proposed budget. We're going to tell you the direction we're moving, and you can give us some feedback. So that was the purpose of this. So it's twofold. And the reason that I had it structured in this manner is because, again, there's just no way to cover every topic. That's why we have the public work sessions. But it was also giving people an opportunity to be there, to know, today we're going to talk about the jail. Today we're going to talk about code changes. And I want to be present. So they won't have to go and sit through another presentation or form or public comments about something they're not interested in. So it was my vision to have them be where they wanted to have the most impact, if that's fair. I just wanted to make that clear.
I thought originally it was an access issue because at first I thought it was planned to be here, and then there was some discussion about moving it out into the community. And so I thought as we move it out in the community that you were going to keep it consistent at each location, but you're saying that there's going to be different topics at each, and I'm just saying that might defeat the purpose of what you were trying to do.
Well, and what I will ask is, if you could tell me what y'all have done in the past, then maybe I could mimic it if it worked.
Well, it's not a matter of you mimicking what's been done in the past. You've presented to us something that you would like to see,
Right.
and you asked us for our input on
Correct.
it. And so one of the inputs was to put it out into the community.
Right.
And then the other input is that it should be consistent through the community.
Again, that's why I had it at the, yes, I hear your concerns.
I think that, okay, Councilman Barnes, and then I think you, Vice Mayor, were after him. So Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. I see where you're going with this. For me, I would rather see us and do more of maybe a survey or something from the citizens and find out what topics they want to discuss, and then maybe go out into the community and then present on the topics that they want to discuss, so that they can feel like that they are the ones having the input, opposed to us kind of directing them what we want to talk about and what we want to put in the budget or whatever the case may be.
Okay, so let me just make sure I am clear on this. We were doing this because council had a retreat that we weren't prepared to do. And so instead of just canceling everything altogether, I thought it would be a great opportunity for the citizens to be engaged during the budget process, because we're right there at the proposed budget. And I figured this would just kind of eliminate some misinformation, or it allows me to gain information on the things that are prudent as it relates to the budget, and also get some of the things that council wants to address. That was the purpose. Now, if we want to make this a bigger event, then I would cancel the February and maybe look at something bigger for what we want to do, because it still has to come in line with budget, because that was our sole purpose. So if council wants a bigger event or wants me to go in another direction, maybe I just need more time and maybe need to postpone this to a later time. Because again, February 9th is around the corner, and I just want it to go well, because this was from hearing the citizens say, teach me, tell me, say something. So if that is what you desire to do, a bigger situation, I could push it back for more time, where it doesn't impact us trying to prepare the budget.
Well, for me, it may not even be a bigger situation. Like if we put out a survey, getting details of what people want to hear about, we may come up with 3 or 4 topics that's important to them, and then we maybe can add our own later on. I just want to see what the public feels important, what should be in the budget, and then we do the forms based off of that instead of us kind of making it about this or making it about that, and they might not even feel that this topic or that topic is important.
Okay, what I can do, because we have 3 days, and to Councilman Hugel's point, we did reach out to the schools, and those are the days that they agreed. Why don't we just kind of cancel it and maybe consider a later date where it doesn't interfere with school board meetings, where council can have, I can actually do a survey to the community and get some things in order, that the vision of council, because I'm here to serve at your direction. So I can definitely just stop this completely and maybe have a bigger work it in a different angle, if that is the desire of council.
Certainly, ma'am, but before you go there, I think we have some other folks with questions. So Vice Mayor Lucasberg, then Councilman Tillage, then I think you may have a better direction with that.
Right. It's a lot of information, and we're sorry that we added the extra 6 items on in the red, but it's definitely something that we want to be of concern, especially going forward with the budget. I didn't know if this was going to be a financial kind of a presentation where you're talking about the city jail and you're talking about cost and how much we would need to put in the jail, or are you just giving them, figures on where the city is and how we need the information. Definitely a registration process, because all of the organizations that I'm in, whenever we go to a conference, we register for topics that we want to hear about, and I think that would streamline it. If people want to come, pick 3 or 4 topics that you want to hear, and that's kind of like the survey that my colleagues are talking about. So, I think that the code changes is important, but I don't think that, the citizens may not want to sit through a whole presentation on that, and maybe do a hybrid kind of a thing where we provide some links, and, before this date, here are some topics that you can learn about before the budget, and they can go in and look at maybe a 5-minute presentation on some of these topics, and then, the ones that remain that are most relevant to the community, then have a session on that. So that's how I
And I love that. So with that being said, because what we can do, that was excellent. Thank you, Vice Mayor. What we can do, I can already set up the presentations as if I were giving them, just like we do budget. And maybe have a link on the website where instead of having a forum, I can present this information, but I'm going to have to do anything else at a later date just to get public feedback. And maybe we could set up a website or something where they could give some feedback. Again, this is just a vision. I have to kind of get the details done, but it would still allow, my biggest thing was giving the citizens an understanding. Because again, we all sit through budget. It doesn't mean we understand it. And I want to give them something that they can walk away with an understanding of where we're going. I don't want citizens to think we're standing still, because we're not, but they just are not informed. I hear council saying, tell me about this street, tell me when you're doing this work. I hear the citizens saying, shouldn't I know? So this was just an opportunity to give them that. So, but what I can do in the meantime, because we may have to postpone this if it's the desire of council, put the information out there, whether it's a link, a video, me saying hi, just create it like I do the regular proposed budget presentations, so that they can have something to defer to, and everybody's getting the same information. if that's fair, if that's a consideration.
That's a consideration. Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor Burke, she just hit on a good point in regards to registering as if we're going to a conference, having the information already out there. One of my points to add would be if we could, first of all, I think your concept is great. I think one thing that our citizens would value is to be educated on issues such as budget, such as infrastructure, and what does it mean, and what the decisions that us as 7 members of council have on their life. And I think that's where a lot of misconception has come in, is because people they think city council can do X, Y, and Z, or city council believes they can do X, Y, and Z. And that's where a lot of public confusion comes in. So I like the fact that we're going out to empower the community while at the same time getting feedback from the citizens. If we could, when we send out a link for the registrations, if we could have a survey attached. So, because not everybody, one, is going to feel comfortable speaking, but then also people that may not have an opportunity to speak can still voice their opinion via survey, via email, et cetera, so that we know exactly what all the concerns are. I think the issues that you presented on the sheet here are all issues that we're hearing from all across the city. And one thing I've always been told is for every person in the world, there's always a different opinion. And so if we go out here and, ask somebody, everybody's gonna have a different thing that they wanna know about. So I think it's good to have a structure that is in place to do that. But like I said, I think that these issues, I don't think any person on this dais is gonna say that public safety is not a top concern. I don't think anybody's gonna say that infrastructure is not a top concern, nor 911 or Airbnbs. We have a lot going on in our city, and so I thank you for the initiative for putting this together, and I hope that if this is the pleasure of council, that we can move forward, because I think the citizens have waited too long to be engaged with our city council. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if I could add something just additional, my time on council in putting together these types of meetings, I've noticed a couple of things. I know that we've had meetings as council at different venues. A lot of times we went to Bidawee, and what I've been able to witness is you get the same people. You get the same people at these particular meetings. And that's only to say that is in that I like the idea of empowerment, of doing different locations. I would also add that when we do these, I think that it's important to be directed and specific to some items, perhaps. I like the idea of getting surveys, perhaps, or getting that back. But once again, that's a time process. And we have to allow for people to respond with a survey. So that, again, takes us into more time in managing the expectations. What I've been able to experience, whenever you do something of this nature, it's not going to please everybody in every circumstance. And so in our effort to be more transparent, to be more accessible, to include the citizens in their city, I applaud the effort. I think we're going to have to see how it works out, because once again, there's going to be things we're going to have to change and adapt and look at and see, did this work, did that work? But the spirit of it is good. I hope that our citizens really participate, because I do know the experience that I've seen in the past is we get the same few people the same time at the meetings, and we encourage more participation. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Right, and Mr. Mayor, to that point, which is true, that we have to be careful about the conclusions that we reach with the data, because the survey and what we're doing is non-scientific, and so it's not reliable. And so I've mentioned this before in council that as we collect data, we are usually doing it in a non-scientific way. And so the conclusions we reach are not, in essence, reliable, because, as the mayor just said, you're hearing from usually the same people. So just a caveat to that.
Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
I think one of the reasons a lot of times we do get some of the same people is because we use the same methods when we try to get the information out. So I think sometimes we need to use different methods to get that information out to people. I know I do a weekly town hall, and I don't get the normal audience that anybody else would get. So I just think it's the methods of how we put it out, and also what you talk about decides your crowd too. So if we talk, like you said, and these are good topics. I'm not saying they're not good topics. I'm just saying that they might not attract, certain topics may not attract certain people because they don't want to hear about certain things. But if they're talking about something that's dear to them, you might get a bunch of people to come out. So it really just depends on who the audience we're reaching to.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
And we have universities all around us that have people with PhDs in collecting data and the steps and the methodology to do it. That might be something to consult so that we will at least have scientific data that we're collecting and not just anecdotal types of data. So I would recommend that as we start trying to collect data, survey, that you might want to just consult Norfolk State ODU, their statistics department, to see how we put these instruments together, and then also how do
Okay,
you
I understand
distribute
where
it.
you're going
Yeah.
I heard you, but I was trying to figure out when we say register, it was going to be what you wanted to hear. But you're going into the data for things that,
When you're talking about surveying and collecting data from
survey
people, yeah,
overall.
I'm saying that is a science. And we have universities around here that can help consult us on how to collect it versus what we normally see, just something in the Virginia pilot, someone responds to it.
Okay,
That's
I
not
understand.
scientific.
Okay, I understand I understand your information now.
So are we clear on the direction of these empowerment sessions? Because based on the discussion, I think we need to give our interim city manager clear direction on moving forward. Would that be accurate, ma'am?
That is absolutely accurate.
Okay. So do we have a consensus on a direction we would like to go, or we stay with the format we have today? Sir, you have the floor.
The format that we have today goes towards what is addressed in the budget, though, correct?
Yes, so all of these things are addressed in the budget. All of these things are topics that citizens have constantly come to council about, because those are the topics council gave me. And so I think my answer is yes,
Yeah,
if that is.
I just wanted to know for my purposes, because I know we're about to ask for consensus. For me, I would just like to see us reach out to the citizens before since this is for the budget, I would like to see I would want to hear from the citizens a little bit more before we, because I know we do get people that come in here, but that doesn't speak to the majority of the people in the city.
And it's also, to your point, it also starts the conversation. And that's what my hope is again, what you say, people don't show up, it's the same people. I want to start a conversation for the ones who continue to show up. It may give misinformation, the ones who show up and didn't get a full understanding, and just show them that we're making movement. We're not sitting still. The city is moving in a wonderful direction. And it just gives them that feel of comfort that, okay, when you have those coffee and topic conversations, you're all saying the same thing. Outside of opinion, the information has been given.
Yeah, and like I said, for me, that's a good empowering people, giving them the information. That's good for that purposes. When it comes to the budget, that's important, and I want to hear from the citizens. So I get where you're coming from.
Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I think from listening to my colleagues, it seems like there's a lot of different, ideas on exactly what empowerment is. And so I agree with everyone that has spoken in regards to getting input, getting the next process. But I think you just made a very good point, is starting the conversation. And so the empowerment aspect from what I'm deriving from the information given is to educate. And so my biggest concern is if we're really going to get the honest opinion from as many citizens as possible before budget gets here, because I mean, we're already almost into February. And so we need that budget done hopefully before June 30th, that we need to begin those conversations immediately. And then once we have those empowerment sessions, we can then go down even further to what Dr. Whitaker was mentioning, reaching out and partnering with universities to begin to do a deeper dive into the survey and collection of results so that we can have that in our decision-making, hopefully by April, May-ish, so that we can have the decisions that we need in place to make a proper decision for the budget.
And another, to your point, I just want to remind everybody, this came alongside of the retreat as well. You have a council retreat. You have a council retreat coming in April. I thought it would be great that you could hear what your citizens, that's a whole conversation to have during the retreat, because it gives you an opportunity to see where the thoughts are with the citizens, where you may want to focus, where we may need to say, hey, I didn't even know that was a concern, because now I've heard. So it had several purposes, you know.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
And Ms. Terry mentioned the retreat. If we had a retreat agenda, I think that would be wonderful to share that with the citizens to get input. But you also mentioned that citizens want to feel comfortable, and to make them feel comfortable, we're asking for input, but they want to see some output. And there are a lot of topics on here, on this list: public safety, crime prevention, even the budget, on how the budget process is going to work. We need to impart some information via output at these meetings. I mean, it's all right to solicit the input, and I don't disagree with anything that my colleagues have said, including the fact that a sample audience is going to be a very small, unscientific audience, as Dr. Whitaker said. And I think to do a real survey, we need to have professionals do that citywide. And we've done that in the past. We surveyed our city services in the past. And I think we need to do that, reference some of these topics. But I think we need to go into a meeting armed with some output and to communicate what we're doing about this, that, and some of these other topics, 911. And if we go to these meetings without any output, that's gonna, I know if I was a citizen, the council came and, okay, what are y'all's concerns? My first thought is, well, what the heck, you don't know, you seven don't know what the concerns are, and you come in here with no answers? That would be my reaction. So I think we need to have input and output at these meetings.
Thank you, sir. I think it's fair because we spent a lot of time on this, which is rightfully so. But I think it's fair, what I've heard is I think we need to proceed forward and give this strategy a chance to evolve into what we desire it to be. I'm not suggesting that it would be a waste of time to do that. I think it would be appropriate at this stage. The interim manager has brought to us a process. I think we need to support the merits of the process initially. Certainly, we can make adjustments along the way, but we need to start somewhere. And I agree with output and input. Both are absolutely important in providing a strategy forward. So if we could just ask our manager to move forward with the process, ensuring that the dates give everybody an opportunity to show up, I think that's the best way to move forward right now.
Yeah, Mr.
Councilman
Mayor.
Hugel.
So if I could speak to the timing, seems that if you had the briefings associated with all of these topics made available so that the public could consume them in February, then maybe we could invite the public to provide feedback in March. Gives you time to kind of figure out the mechanics of how you're going to get the feedback and what you're going to do with it and what we're going to do with it, and gives the public time to read up on kind of where your team's head is on these topics regarding budget assembly.
Tillage, did you want the floor, sir?
Oh, no, I thought you were calling for the consensus.
Yes,
I'm just ready
would,
to vote.
I would like for us to come to a conclusion with a consensus by show of hands to move the process forward. So, ma'am, you're empowered to move the process forward as we stated, as you stated.
For the dates that we still have, everything stay in place.
I think there was a question about the school board. Perhaps that could be something. Are we concerned about those nights? Or do we want to proceed forward with the scheduled nights we have? Councilman Hugo,
Yeah,
you have the floor.
so my concern, more than school board dates, is rushing the process to get feedback. And so my recommendation for us to consider is, let's put the information out there and broadcast it in February so that our neighbors have a chance to read up, do their homework, and then let's look at scheduling in those same 3 locations in March and check the city calendar to make sure we're not scheduling conflicts. But that would be my recommendation regarding the timing, to give us time to let people do their homework.
I agree with that.
Okay, then, so the ask for consensus on this matter going forward, then in February, there will be no in-person empowerment meetings. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we will shoot for March being the empowerment meetings in person, and the instruction, you heard the instruction. Did you, ma'am?
So let me just go back
Okay.
so I understand. So what I have been charged to do, one, we're going to move the dates back to March. We'll check the calendar to see what's available so it doesn't conflict with any other meetings that may be public. In the process of this, I'll work with my marketing team to get information out to the public, really, as it relates to these topics. Again, we've gotten some good information, some different vision. So I think I have what I need to move forward. But again, proposed budget, I think it's, I don't remember so many dates, March. Yeah, and then we have another event in April. So I'm going to check my calendar and see what we have available. But in the meantime, we had already started on all those things to get this done. So it's just going to buy us a little more time. And I believe, Honorable Mayor, I have my marching orders from
Okay.
council.
Is that agreeable to all members of council? Thank you, sirs and ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, no more me. So what I am asking to bring forth now is the PRHA Lexington Place. This is in regards to funding for the Phase 2 of Lexington Place. And Mr. Ed Bland will be providing this presentation. So as you proceed to the next slide.
Good evening, Council. and
Good
Honorable
evening,
Mayor.
Mr. Bland. Could you also identify who you have next to you, sir?
Good evening. I'm Elisa Winston, Deputy Executive Director for Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority.
Thank you both for being here.
And I'm Ed Bland. I'm the Executive Director for the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority. Some time ago, if you remember, a few years ago, the council came up with a budget for us to redevelop Lincoln into what we call Lexington. And at that particular time, I think it was like 1.5 million. And when we did Phase 1, which was the 72 units, we grew down 300,000 towards Phase 1. And this is just for construction. It's not for our day-to-day operation, nothing like that. We're talking about just for construction only. So now we're here because we get ready to do Phase 2, which is going to be a senior citizen building, which is, and you kind of see the remnants of what it would look like. So the reason why we're here tonight is because we're in the process of get ready to do Phase 2, and we want to have the council to make that commitment for the balance of the money, which is roughly about $1.2 million, which is going to be used for the construction of Phase 2 for the elderly units at the old Lincoln Park site. And if you remember some time ago, I think the city did a study, had a housing study done, and in that study, it clearly said that one of the things needed was more affordable housing and senior housing. And you guys paid quite a few dollars for, I think, for that study. So we are here to champion that study, and we want to help to move this forward, because there is a need for additional senior housing within the city of Portsmouth, because we know that's one of the fastest growing population, which is our elderly population. And we're here to answer any questions that you have. Now, the Phase 2 is roughly $30 million. We're getting a low-income housing tax credit from the state, which is roughly $12,282,000. We have a loan that we're putting in, which is 2.6. We have another grant coming from Virginia Housing Development. And then we have development contribution 1.5. We have the Housing Trust Fund, which is coming from the state, $900,000. We had the Hampton Road Planning Commission going to put in $400,000. And then the city, we're asking you for 1.2, and we have equity gap of $911,000, which is for a total development of $30 million to do phase 2, which would be, as I said earlier, the additional senior units for that particular site. Any questions?
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Bland, at the previous presentation, there was a request for documentation. Has that documentation been provided to the city regarding the financial statements the last 2 years, which we were told they were available, but it had not been done? The audited statements, have they been sent to the city?
Those are, the audits still have not been completed by independent auditors. We're still waiting for those to be completed. And they probably will be completed, I'm going to say March or April. Right now, auditing firms across the country, they're having the staffing problems. So I can only tell you probably in March or April we will have those. But keep in mind too, those audits will not have anything really to reflect on this, because the audit is really based on just our daily operation more than anything else, instead of what I call this construction piece here.
Right. Well,
but we will provide that to you once we have it. Yeah.
Right. $1.2 million is not a small request. And we've had organizations before that the city was funding, and there was a request for financial statements, and they weren't presented. And so I know that that request was made over 3 months ago. And also there was a request in regards to the minority contracting, which you did send, but the financial statements were not. The other question that was raised by council was that you mentioned that a previous council had approved this some years ago. And when that was approved some years ago, the cost of the project was significantly higher, and now the project has been scaled back. Do you know how much it has been scaled back by?
I'm not sure of what was the original one was. I can only tell you at Lincoln at one time there was over close to 300 units there. So it was scaled back as far as the number of family units that went from close to 300 units down to 72 units. And then the second phase, like I said a few minutes ago, was adjusted 102 units, elderly units, so that we would not have that high concentration in that area that we had before.
Right.
And that was the reason why, you might say, the scale back.
Right, so, well, it went from 300 to 174 based on the numbers you just gave.
Correct, yeah. Roughly.
And I would assume that there was some cost decrease with that as well.
I'm sorry,
I would assume there were some cost decreases as well when it went back from 300 to 174.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the construction costs have increased significantly for us. We initially were looking at building back over 200 units. We're not doing that now, but also because we're doing a mid-rise unit, we have additional costs such as the elevator costs, common area costs, things that we did not have when we were doing a townhome
So do
design.
you know what the cost was when you approached the previous council when it was 300 units?
No, I don't know that cost.
See, that would be, I would think, information that council would want to know, because if you have scaled the project back and your costs have now decreased, then the commitment that council made to you now may have been washed out by your decrease in the unit design.
I wouldn't think the costs decreased because the construction costs have increased. The
Right, but
type of
you-
design that we have now is
Right.
considerably more to build a mid-rise unit than to build single-family.
Right, but you just said you don't know.
I don't know the exact cost that
Right.
we proposed back in 2017.
Right, so you don't know.
So I will
if
say
it's
that just
increased.
looking at the trend over the last 3 years and what it cost us to build Lexington 1 and what it's costing us to build Lexington 2, it's significantly
Right.
increased.
Well, all I'm just saying is that would have been information I would think council would want to know before it commits out $1.2 million on a project that has been scaled back. As far as in scaling it back, what has the cost decrease been?
What we can do is, Dr., we can try to get you what we consider the cost would have been 2 years ago, opposed to what the construction cost is today. Although we may be building less units, but we all know that the cost of construction is much higher today than it was 2 years ago.
Right.
And
Well-
so, just based on that, to make this project work, you would have to scale back because of just construction that costs for material and labor, opposed to a few years ago.
Right.
I'm not disputing what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, although we may be doing less units, the cost to do those less units is much higher today than it would be been 2 years ago, even 3 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have to speculate or estimate because a presentation was made to a previous council. And so wouldn't it be prudent for us to just get the information that was presented, that I would assume it showed what the cost would be for the 300 units, and you would compare that to this, and then we could make a better decision.
Well, and we'll try to get that for you. I can only say when that was done, I was not here prior to 2016, when all that happened, I was not here. We will see if we can find that, but I can't promise you we can. I have not seen anything in writing in our files that indicate that. I mean, what that cost was. But we'll do our best.
And I would just like to point out, if you see, a couple of years ago, we just did phase 1 of Lexington Place. That was $15 million for 72 units. So now at 105 units, we're looking at almost 30 million. So you can see there, that is a big cost, increase because of the mid-rise unit.
Like I said, my question isn't that. My question is just comparing
presented to
what
the
was
city
presented,
council
right,
then
to see
back in
what the
2017.
difference is. Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm not disagreeing with you that costs have increased.
Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor. So Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, Phase 2 will be taxable, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Phase 2 will be taxable, in other words, would generate real estate
Yes.
taxes?
Yes.
What's that figure projected to be?
I don't have that figure in front of me, but I think what was previously provided to you in 2021, we paid maybe $340,000 in taxes. 340,000 in taxes. But either we pay real estate or pilot, so this is tax generating. So we will pay
Right.
taxes on this in some form.
Well, you have down here, I guess, the Phase 1 generated 340,000 in real estate taxes. Is that correct? Yeah,
That is what we paid in 2021 in real estate taxes,
yeah.
the
But-
authority, yes.
But Phase 2 will
Additional,
be in addition to
Yes.
this, correct?
correct.
Okay. I agree with my colleague on, before I would support any funding, I would want to see the financials as well.
Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So
just to clarify, so the 2021 real estate taxes that you're mentioning, that was just for Lexington Place alone,
No, that's what we paid.
for all your properties?
For our properties,
Okay,
correct.
so the projected for the new senior village would be approximately double this, or would it be a couple of tens of thousands in addition?
Probably would be another. Probably would be, I'm just probably about another 40,000, I would say.
An additional 40,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because right at the present time, we're paying real estate taxes of roughly close to 300,000 for everything that we have. Yeah.
Got you. And so I'm all for affordable housing. I definitely think there's a huge need in our city for it, especially when we speak about our most vulnerable population being our senior citizens. So I think the project is great. I too would like just to see some type of financials. I know that what you're talking about is for construction costs, which is separate from daily operation costs. And looking at the total project, the 1.2 million is less than 5% of the total project, which in my opinion, I think that the city standing in solidarity with PRHA in a partnership, that alone to me speaks volumes to our citizens that we are at the table. I do know that you all report to the state, and you all also report to federal government through HUD. And so there's a lot of barriers that you all go through and a lot of reporting that you all do just to keep your doors open just with HUD and with the Commonwealth of Virginia. But I do thank you for this, and I think the 1.2 million, I don't think it's too much of an ask, but of course it's up to council. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bland and Ms. Winston, for the presentation. I was on the council in 2017 when I believe the first presentation was made, and as us being in partnership with PRHA, I believe that we need to stand firm on our commitment to give the resources that you need to go ahead and move. We've kicked this can down the road long enough, and if the financials are not going to show us anything different relative to the construction costs versus the operation costs, I believe that we need to honor the 1.2 million. We do have it in the budget. I think it's been moved around a few times, but it's still there for you. I don't see how reviewing financial is going to give us any better determination that we are partners with you still, and we need senior housing for our most vulnerable population. And I'm on another board where they are having difficulties with CPA firms completing the audits. I mean, that was one of the reasons why ours was held up. Employees are the most valuable resource, but there are slim pickings all across the nation. And I know that this is going to continue to be an issue, and I don't want to hold this project up any further, trying to wait on a financial report when we need to get this done. We have seniors who need these housing. We need community who needs these housing. We're going to get the report. We've asked for it. We know you're not trying to, withhold any information from us. So I would urge my colleagues to release the money, get the financials, have it on record, and move forward.
Thank you, ma'am. And I do have one that I need to add. So a couple of things. I had the privilege of attending the United States Mayor's Conference last week, and I sat in on the presentation by HUD and other organizations. And one thing I came away from that meeting with a very clear understanding is you all get your funding from HUD. And I do understand that you're under strict guidelines to follow the financial compliance of HUD. So I don't have a problem with your financials because you have historically presented strong financials. The other thing I want to say that what came out of that meeting was affordable housing and senior housing. The need, we're already several thousand units behind in most every area, so there's a sense of urgency. The other thing that came out was the cost of materials, and how do we pay for these things as costs continue to escalate? I would agree with the Vice Mayor. We have dealt with this much too long, and by pushing it down the road, what we do is we give less coverage for affordable housing to our senior population, who is certainly in need. So I'm going to support this because you all are a quasi-governmental agency of the city of Portsmouth, and you were put in place to provide affordable housing for the least amongst us, our residents and our seniors, and you are doing a fantastic job. And so I'm going to support this in the spirit of what it's doing. By the way, if you look at the potential tax revenue that we have gathered, from what's previously been put there and what potentially could happen, I'm looking at $400,000, upwards of that. 3 years of $400,000 takes care of $1.2 million. It's an investment that we make into our community. It is an investment that is needed, and it's time that the city council support Portsmouth redevelopment and housing in its mission. And so, lady and gentlemen, I will be supporting this effort. Sir, you have the floor.
Let's make sure that we're not confusing this with how we stand and support seniors. This has nothing to do with whether we're in solidarity with seniors, whether we support, because the $1.2 million, that also stands in solidarity with seniors who complain about driving across roads that have holes in it. That also applies to seniors who we're trying to give assistance to in times of these crises. And so it's not a matter of us standing in solidarity. My concern is that you are asking for $1.2 million. We have not received financial statements. There's been a change in the project as presented, and we're supposed to be using these funds in a way that is very prudent. Also, I have a question in regards to the senior housing. We had a presentation that came before council back in December that dealt with a private venture that was to build 82 senior family units. It was the flats at Twin Pines. When I looked at the presentation for tonight and looked at the previous presentation, it rang a bell. Are you all involved with the flats at Twin Pines now? Because that is a senior development project.
The Housing Authority, we purchased that partial land from the previous developer. He was not able to come through, so we purchased that, and we're going to build senior housing on that site.
Right. So now I find that very problematic because the flats at Twin Pines came before council on December the 13th. By December the 28th, according to the records here, PRHA had purchased the property, even though they came before council requesting rezoning and a use permit. And now you went and spent how much to purchase that property?
I think it was, I believe it was, I think it was 300-some thousand for it, I believe. I'm not sure. I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, because according to the city records here, you spent on December 28th, $700,000. That's what it has as the sales price in the public record.
It may have been because it was
That's a
zoned
big difference
commercial.
from $300,000.
I'm just saying I don't have that in front of me,
Right.
so I was
So
speculating.
see, this is why I'm requesting your financial statements, because you had, and I just don't believe that economic development and PRHA didn't know that there was going to be a change in ownership of this property, that it would move from a private owner who comes before council to get a rezoning and a use permit, and then in less than 2 weeks, the property is transferred to PRHA for what you said, $300,000. The record says $700,000, and now you're asking us for $1.2 million when you have $700,000 to purchase that property. That's why I'm asking for your financial records, because we can't just go out here on emotionalism like some of my colleagues keep trying to reduce this to standing with seniors. No, it's about, are we using the funds properly? If you can spend $700,000 and a developer can come before us, and that looks very questionable, that a private developer comes before us, gets a rezoning and a use permit, and then in less than 2 weeks, PRHA purchase it for $700,000, and now you're asking council for 1.2. And so I think my question and my request is very legitimate. And I think that's very questionable what transpired before council between December and today.
Thank you, sir. And if I could, because I think we've certainly, the question that we're discussing is the $1.2 million that you're coming to ask for. And all the other things, although perhaps important to how you operate your line of business, it's not relative to this point today.
That's your
So,
opinion.
Sir,
That's your opinion.
sir, you don't have the floor. You do not have the floor. Okay, we good? No, you don't have the floor.
Okay.
Councilman Barnes, you have the floor, sir.
In my opinion, I think it is relative because we're giving money to this person. So I think we have to also consider those things. And I know we use the term kick down the road, but one of the reasons why we postponed it was because of the financials. And we didn't receive those financials yet. So that it wasn't kicked down the road simply because we just wanted to kick it. It was for a specific reason.
Thank you, sir. We have before us a discussion, and this party has come to us to ask for a decision on $1.2 million. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, I am going to call for a consensus. I am going to call for a consensus of my colleagues on council to either support by a consensus of show of hands or to not support. And
May
so
I
at
have
this,
the
sir,
floor?
you do not have the
Why
floor,
is it that
sir.
you're trying to cover up the
Sir,
discussion?
sir, you do
Why
not
are
have
you
the,
trying to cover
sir,
up the
you are
discussion?
out
I
of
have a very
order.
legitimate
You are out of
question.
order. You are out of order.
700,000 is out of order.
Where's the sergeant at arms?
You can't have.
Please
the
have
sergeant-
him removed from the
You
meeting.
can't remove me because
Please
he
have
work-
him removed
he works
from the
for
meeting.
the city manager.
You're out of the order,
They're
sir.
on duty right now. They work for the city
Sir,
manager. You cannot
sir,
direct the daily activities.
Have him
of-
removed from this meeting.
He's
As the chair, I have,
he is a police officer under
sir,
the city
please remove him
manager's
from the
direction.
meeting.
I will move. I'll move from the public meeting.
Please, sir, you
be
were
back.
removed from the meeting, sir. You are removed, sir. Have a nice day.
I'll be back for the regular meeting.
Thank you, sir. You are removed from this meeting.
Stop trying to cover up.
Thank you, sir. You are out of order,
That's a
and you
legitimate
are removed from the meeting.
It's a legitimate question.
Have a great day, sir. I certainly do not expect that we will conduct our city business that way. And I will reiterate to you, in my experience, and I believe the experience of members on this council, as it relates to how PRHA conducts its operation, we are okay with that. And so at this time, I would call for a consensus based on the $1.2 million request. We know that the financials are pending, and certainly we have made decisions in this body without having the information that was pending from credible organizations. So I would ask that we have a show of hands who are in support of the $1.2 million for the senior housing. We have 4 votes. That is a consensus. Thank you very much. We have now come to the point in this discussion where it is number 4, City Council Liaison reports. Are there any reports from our City Council liaisons? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I have 2 reports tonight. First is the Mayor's Military Affairs Committee met this month, and the chairman, Mr. Lindley, invited mental health professionals in to speak to the Military Affairs Committee. It was an important discussion. We have a high concentration of veterans in our community who are suffering from mental health issues, and the military health system, frankly, is recognized to be overloaded. And so it was an important conversation to introduce the mental health resources that are available in the community to our military installation commanding officers. Great discussion, and I appreciate Chairman Lindley organizing that. Secondly, I attended the Planning Commission. I wanted to share with the public that one of the presentations at Planning Commission, the city staff is reviewing our zoning ordinance and has made a long list of corrections, changes, and clarifications to our zoning ordinance. They brought that to the Planning Commission for conversation. I think the commission correctly decided to postpone a decision until March to give the public time to digest the long list of corrections, changes, and clarifications. I'll point out that some of those clarifications in particular are not just grammar or dotting i's and crossing t's. They're of substance. They result from disagreements between the interpretation of zoning ordinance between the city staff and builders or developers who came in to execute or get approval for use permits and whatnot. And so my admonition is for folks who are interested in those things to take the time that the Planning Commission is offering between now and their March meeting to review those changes to the zoning ordinance and provide comment or be prepared to provide comment to the Planning Commission in March. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir, for that report. Are there any other liaison reports? Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Attended the Hampton Roads Regional Jail Meeting Authority as the chair, and one of the things that I have requested previously is that we receive an update to the council. There are some very specific and strategic things that are happening with the Hampton Roads Regional Jail that I think our council would need to be updated to. And for a matter of public record, everywhere is suffering with employees, and of course, the Hampton Roads Regional Jail Authority is no exception. They did offer an increase bonus, a one-time bonus to retention to keep deputies, but of course, once they raise their rates, then Chesapeake raised their rates, and Virginia Beach raises their rates, and it's just a circular process of trying to keep deputies, and that is one of the issues that is very pertinent with the Hampton Roads Regional Jail. So at one point, I know we're in budget season and we're going into a retreat, but if we could add the Hampton Roads Regional Jail Authority in a closed session so that our council members will be updated to what's actually going on with the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, I would be most appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. And I do have one thing to report. It was my pleasure to receive a call last Friday from the Hampton Roads Realtors Association informing me that Portsmouth, Virginia was chosen from Realtor.com as the #1 city in the United States for first-time home buyers. So I think based on that announcement, you all should give yourselves a hand because people are moving to Portsmouth, and we're glad about that. So thank you all. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the EDA meeting along with Councilman Tillage, and Malcolm Mitchell was installed as the new chairman of the EDA. Outgoing Chairman Ray Smith was recognized for his volunteerism. And among things that were discussed, there was a presentation by Director of Tourism, Keith Toller. He introduced a new video and a new marketing campaign that drew some discussion. We Are Different, I believe, is the theme of the video, and it gathers some discussion. I think at the end of the day, the consensus was we're different in a good kind of way. Marketing campaigns, as you know, are always subject to opinions. There were also some presentations on some of the business incentive grants that were awarded and still available to our business community. Also, the Hard Times Skate Shop was approved. They hit upon hard times through some water damage through no fault of their own. A grant, a $1,500 incentive reimbursement grant for some floor damage incurred was approved by the board. Councilman Tillage, would you like to add anything to that? Councilman Tillage was there with me at the EDA meeting.
No, I think you covered just about everything, I do believe.
Okay.
Very good recap.
I also attended the Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and numerous renovations in historic communities were approved by the commission. And you know, that commission does, we don't hear much of that, but they do a yeoman's work in keeping the integrity of our historic districts intact, and that's extremely important. And many times they're put in a position of saying no to people who set out to do renovations with building materials that aren't approved. So if you're moving into a historic district, please check with planning, and don't rely on a realtor telling you that you can do anything in a historic district. Please do your homework. Find out what the approved materials are before you pay somebody and perhaps have to undo what you paid somebody to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all for those reports. We now have, and that concludes our scheduled presentations and reports, and we now move into, we have a need to go into closed session.
I have it.
And Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, would
Yes.
you read the motion, please?
Thank you. I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A7 for the purpose of briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, specifically regarding Victory West Thrill Park LLC versus City of Portsmouth. Circuit Court Case Number 2200505500 and 1 Ace Parker Drive.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Hugel.
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Aye.
Mr. Moody.
Yes.
Mr. Tillage.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker is absent. Mayor Glover.
Yes. We are in closed session. Coming out of closed, and then we'll take a 3-minute break, and then we'll come back at 7:05.
I hereby move that each council member certify that to the best of his or her knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Hugel.
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Yes.
Mr. Moody.
Yes.
Mr. Tillage.
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes.